So as mentioned in the sessions yesterday about our learners, adult learners are self-directed, they're internally motivated, they prefer to be actively involved and participating, they like to build on previous experiences, and they have a need to learn practical and useful information. And for those reasons, games are a really nice strategy for getting them engaged in the classroom. So who in here has included a game as part of a lecture? Oh yeah, sure to have. And we'll talk about specific types a little later, so keep in mind your games. One of the reasons that I picked to focus on health profession is that it's actually the most popular subject area for learning games. They have been successfully used in things like psychiatry, GI, obstetrics. There's also a famous one in business economics called the tragedy of the tuna, based on the tragedy of the common. But health science tends to be its most popular subject area and the area that is producing what I believe is currently the most research on game-based learning. As a matter of fact, our biggest organization, the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, came out last year and recommended developing serious games as part of pharmacy education. They recommend it as a way for both faculty and student innovation with new and innovative techniques. We can define games as the use of game principles for purposes of learning, skill acquisition, and training. It can also be defined as an instructional method that requires the learner to participate in a competitive activity that has rules. And it can be used throughout the classroom. So as you've used games, sometimes you might use it in the beginning as kind of a bell ringer or like a way to focus the class in on the topic. It can be used during class as a teaching tool. And it can be used after class to help revise and apply the concepts, which is how I usually use it. So why should we play to learn? Before we get into the benefits to our learners, there are also quite a few benefits, I believe, to our teachers who are using them. The first thing is faculty creativity and innovation. I'm convinced that if you have an interest in any kind of game, you could use it in the classroom. You just got to tweak it a little bit to whatever topic you're teaching. In addition, once students see you learning games and being comfortable with games, they tend to use them as well. For last year, 2 of my students on rotation used games as part of their topic discussions. One of them used Jeopardy, kind of a reliable standard. Another one used the dice game Sparkle, kind of like Yahtzee, to engage the audience. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits is that if we can use our creativity to teach students, they will feel comfortable using them as well. It, of course, will increase your interaction with students, and it really goes towards motivation. I feel like with games, if they're done correctly, they're really on just the outer edge of student competence. And so you can really apply games to a variety of skill sets of learners because they're going to keep trying the game and keep playing it until they become skilled. We know that time on task is also a significant factor in student motivation and engagement. And the immersion effect of games, especially some of the game show games that we're going to talk about and things like that, really increase the time on task and the attention to the topic at hand. Finally, I thought one of the funny characteristics about games that I in preparing this talk was that it's an infinitely patient tutor. So students, if they were playing the game independently, can play it over and over and over again, and the game will just keep providing the same feedback in order for them to learn. The benefits to learners in game-based learning cross the 3 domains. The 2 that I'm going to be affecting most, that I'm going to be discussing most, are the cognitive and the affective. So across the cognitive domain, you can see there are several benefits listed here. Teams, especially if it's a team-based game, the students tend to have cooperative and peer learning. They help each other. They also, games are based on decision-making and problem-solving, which helps with critical thinking. An important aspect of games is the immediate feedback. So in a game, they're going to know if they got it right or wrong and what the right answer actually is. In some games, it can actually provoke recall and past experiences beyond just what they learned in the subject matter at hand. It also leads to higher order processing with situation-based and problem-centered activities. Across the affective domain, games are just really fun. They're exciting, they're enjoyable. You get to see your students enjoying what they're learning. It's engaging. It tends to be a less stressful environment for learning. I know when I started using games in the classroom, I was a little concerned that students would be anxious about getting the answer wrong in front of their peers or something. But typically, at least in the pharmacy classroom, they've known each other for a while, and it tends to be less stressful because it is just a game. They're usually not very high stakes. They can increase their confidence. They work as a team. They have increased motivation, and there is a ton of interpersonal communication. However, games are not a perfect learning technique. If the games are too complex or too highly have too many directions, it can cause confusion and distraction away from what you're actually learning. Rewards are also a very controversial part of game-based learning. We'll talk about that a little later. But for example, if you set the reward as something like extra points on a test, that might be the focus, especially for someone who's not doing well, versus the actual game. One thing that is a struggle in large classrooms is that if the entire class isn't involved, then the rest of the class, which is the audience, can lose focus. So for example, if you just have a couple students who are representing like the leaders of a team, the rest of the class can kind of zone out. It does take time to develop games. So as a faculty member, you really have to put in the time to develop them. One thing that is a perk though is that once you have developed it, you really just have to revise it and update it from year to year. It doesn't take that much time. But the initial setting up and making sure that it'll go smoothly does take time. We'll talk about cost. Some of these that we'll talk about are things like crossword puzzles, which are free, card games, all the way up to some very sophisticated computer games that can be costly to develop. And then finally, as a faculty member, one of the things we're always concerned about is our precious lecture time. We don't have that much time to teach a topic, so we really need to make sure that if it's a game or review, that's effective, and it's an effective use of that time. Some feedback we've had from learners about games are responsibility, so it's memorable that when you make a mistake, you remember it. You get immediate feedback, so when you get it wrong, you want to do the game again and again until you get it right. That's that competitive nature. And then focus. So in a review, for example, that you know, okay, I'm pretty confident in this area, but these are the areas where I'm moving to. These are the different categories of games that we'll talk about today. They range from board games to game show based to card games to apps. And so we're just going to do a brief overview of each of these categories. Board games were studied in a class that was focused on case studies. There were 128 students, and in this case studies class, the students also designed games. So the faculty member designed a game, and then the students were assigned groups to design them along the way throughout the semester. They designed games such as Trivial Pursuit, Cranium, Monopoly, and then the students were assessed via a survey. The students strongly agreed that the games reviewed the lecture topics and engaged them. They all felt that the games increased their knowledge base and were beneficial. About 70% of them felt that the games increased their test scores and the corresponding scores. Another example of board games that are kind of specific to pharmacy is Race to Glucose. So this was done in first year pharmacy students. There were 47 of them. And the players rolled the dice to move pieces along the gluconeogenesis pathway. They had to respond to quiz questions along the pathway in order to get to glucose at the end. The assessment was that over half of them felt that they improved the understanding of their content, felt it was a worthwhile activity, and a large majority of them felt it was fun. But in this study, they say that less than half of them felt it helped them perform better on the assessment. So kind of the takeaway from this one is that it's really fun and they enjoyed it, but not sure if it met our outcomes on the assessment. This is one of my favorite games from the last year. This is starting into our interactive games. I teach the sexually transmitted infections lecture in the pharmacy school. So this one was Where in the World Does Carmen STD Go? And it was really fun. Each student got a description of an STD and a city. So for example, this infection is often screened for using RPR and Tokyo. The students would then find their groups and determine which infection they were, answer questions related to that infection, and the first group to complete the case plans. And then then we all answered questions of the class at the debrief and group. I've done is in my invasive fungal infections lecture, the fungus and fungus games. And so again, each student has a description of a fungal infection. They find their groups, answer cases related to their fungus, and then we discuss all the fungal cases. The next two are ones that were published by other pharmacy faculty. One is pharmacy scene investigation, kind of like CSI. I thought this was pretty clever, where two members of the team act as lead detectives, and there's an unsolved death scenario. And the death is related to an adverse drug reaction or some kind of drug-drug interaction that was fatal. And so it requires the students to go back and put the pieces together as to what happened to this patient. Clue is similar to the game Clue. In this case, each student researched 4 drugs and taught to their other group members. Using the information about those drugs, they had to figure out who the murderer was, the weapon used, the location, and then successfully answer those questions as a team in order to figure out who did it. Any questions so far? Okay. Moving on to game show based. So this was a game in the sepsis lecture, Survivor Sepsis. The class was divided into 4 teams. They passed around a buzzer, and individuals would answer questions for their team. This is the one that I first felt some question about anxiety in front of the class, because if they get it wrong, their team is off the island. But really, they ended up enjoying it, got positive feedback from it, and I think it's a fun way to try to review all the sepsis material in the class. The next two that we're going to discuss are more for small groups. So this was oral anticoagulant family feud, everyone's favorite game. So this is one that I did with both pharmacy students as well as medical residents. So we got some professional education in there as well. In this case, they had 2 teams or 2 families. Each team had a buzzer, and just like on the game show, I'm not sure I'm familiar, which surprisingly some students were. But an individual from each team will play first, and then the winner will decide if your team will pass or play based on their category. The team then has to answer 3 questions, and the highest score wins. Obesity management catchphrase is another good one for small groups. This was 2 teams made up by counting off every other person, and they try to get their teammates to guess the phrase on the card. I got this idea from Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show because I realized that he could do catchphrases with celebrities and make it about any topic he wanted. And so I took the same concept and just made cards where they still use the buzzer, the catchphrase buzzer, for a timer and for the heightened competitive with the timer going off. But then I could use the cards for anything else. So I think this could apply to just about any kind of small group education where you're trying to get your teammates to guess what's on the card. Another one that was published is the Who Wants to Be a Med Chem Millionaire? So this was 6 teams of 6 rang a bell to answer questions projected on the screen, and they won Med Chem Moolah as they went along. So the team with the most Med Chem Moolah then won. This is the game that I do on my experiential rotations. It's a drug information race. Drug information in pharmacy can be a little bit dry, so trying to make it a little bit more competitive. What I do is I give them the abbreviation of the landmark trial. I usually use nice sugar. So I give them an abbreviation of a trial without the journal name or date or authors. And then the first student who can pull up the full PDF of the article wins by doing a PubMed search. Afterward, we debrief as a group. I usually have 3 students at a time. So the 4 of us debrief and discuss our search strategy. And every single time, they do something pretty different. So it really helps for me to be able to see where they are with their drug information searches and add a little bit of competition as well. A couple of card games that have been studied are cardiology and infectious diseases. In this case, students played each game, and there was a pre- and post-assessment. The results of this study showed that assessment scores improved significantly. All of the students indicated that the game made them think about bugs and drugs in a new way. Almost all of them indicated that the game made them think about cardiac pharmacology in a new way. And what I thought was interesting that this study did is that they looked at the students' learning preference based on BARC, and all of them seem to improve with kinetic learning improving the most. The next theory that I'll discuss is how technology can help us with games. This is for competition based on assignment. One of them that I've seen used is YouTube submissions. So I think if you teach anything in communication, for example, I've seen them with patient counseling as well as patient interviewing. Students would compete to submit the best YouTube video or upload the best YouTube video. So you can see it that way. Wordle is a word cloud technology, and so the students could also create the best Wordle. I'll show you a couple of examples. And then the use of things like hashtags on Instagram and Twitter. These are a couple different Wordles. Wordle is free website, and so it allows you to make shapes, just about any shape you want. The one on the left is mine. This is on the front page of my class website. And what I did here is I just took my student feedback about my rotation and threw it into Wordle. The way it works, if you're not familiar with it, is that the biggest words are the ones that are repeated the most. So in my case, I really liked that they've had patients and students and treatment as some of the most common words in this word cloud. Another one is listed here. This is based on environment and hybrid research. Again, systems and research is going to be the most words in this word cloud. So you can really use this for any topic, and again, there are tons of shapes available for them to put in these words. Using Instagram and Twitter, classroom hashtags could be a talk all of its own. But what I like is what I'm trying to start is Instagram based on infectious diseases. And so an idea could be, for example, I want to know on my students who I have on rotation, how many of them can find the most advertisements about flu prevention? You know, we're seeing them everywhere right now, cover your mouth, get your flu shot, things like that. And could they just take a picture, upload it to Instagram, and tag it with flu ads 2015 or something like that? And then all I have to do is go into Instagram and click on that hashtag, and I see all of their submissions. So it's a nice way to organize what they're submitting to you. And you can use this in a lot of different ways, but I prefer to use it. I know people that teach in language, they may say for students to submit the most things in that language that they see driving around and things like that. A free method of puzzles is crossword puzzles. These were used in pharmacology and medicinal chemistry. The clues in the puzzle correlated with learning objectives. And one thing that they brought up in this study, which I thought was really interesting, is that crossword puzzles have this unique characteristic of self-correction. So if you get the wrong answer, it's not going to fit. So they immediately know it's correct. So I think that's kind of a unique characteristic of crossword puzzles. In 144 students who they studied, over 90% indicated that the puzzles enhanced their learning, oriented them to important topics, and served as good reviews. Most crossword puzzles that I've seen online are free to create. So this is another way that may be relatively quick and pretty inexpensive to include in the classroom. This was specific to cardiac cycle. This puzzle I thought was interesting though because it was used across multiple health science professions. It was used in physical therapy, it was used in medicine and pharmacy, and it was a puzzle for teaching cardiac physiology. Over half of the students reported that the puzzle helped to promote their understanding of the cardiac cycle. About a third of them reported that they needed the puzzle to understand the cardiac cycle. And what I most liked about this is that results didn't differ very significantly among professions. So it kind of shows that some of these games can be used across professions and still be effective. The puzzle itself is pretty simple. You can see it here. Students went around to tables and picked up these pieces and had to insert them into the right place on the scroll. There are a ton of web and app-based games that are related to health sciences. I think part of the trick is finding the best ones. So I tend to go with the ones that are by national organizations or by universities. One that I think is really entertaining is Tetris, which is Tetris of sepsis. And so you can see it listed over here. So they have to evaluate the patient before the patient gets to the bottom for sepsis. There's also Code Yellow. So this is, takes people through a disaster, different healthcare professionals, and making the right decision. Both Euro Challenge and Prognosis are case-based apps, and most of these are free. Euro Challenge and Prognosis are case-based, and they take students through quizzes. What I think is interesting is Euro Challenge was actually developed by the American Neurology Association. And so it's very evidence-based, and so if you have students in neurology, that is a great one. This is probably the most expensive game I'll talk about, but I thought it was very interesting. Again, urology tends to be a theme. They're really progressive and exciting. So this is an adventure game on a computer. This was to teach urinalysis, microscopy urinalysis to be exact. And they divided medical students into playing the adventure games called Euro Island, which you can see here, versus text-based conventional training. They then assessed the learning outcomes with a 34-item test. And they found that the game-based group test average was statistically significantly higher than the conventional text-based. The attitudes were also significantly more positive with the game-based group. So I wanted to show this one because a lot of time and development went into this. They used their video game and medical informatics departments to help them come up with this game. So I just wanted to show a range of the inexpensive and the free crossword all the way up to these complex adventure games. We also want to know how students feel about these games. Do they feel like they're a waste of time in general, or do they like them? And so in this case, they just took two sets of medical school students, a total of 217. And almost all of them liked the idea of using technology, not too surprising. They did feel that education should make better use of new media technologies. Most of them believe that video games can have educational value. They would use a multiplayer game similar to the adventure game if it helped them accomplish an important goal. And almost all of them would do the game if it was fun. So for those of you who raise your hands who have done game-based learning in the classroom, have you done, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you didn't finish your sentence.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, if you have done a game in the classroom, did you do something similar to these or different?
I've done, most of my students are online, so I've done crossword, I've done Wordle, and there's also a public health game out there that I've recommended to use, and what it does is it's an epidemiology game, and it gives you a scenario where people are getting sick, and then you go in and there's like 5 options that you can select. And eventually you wind up testing the drinking water, and it's a bacteria in the drinking water. So it takes you through all the steps of epidemiology. Yeah, and it takes a long time to play out. You have to be pretty focused, but it's a good one. So yes, I thought everybody was going to be raising it. Like I'd be like 1 of 1,000.
Anybody else? Something similar to that?
It's really your catchphrase. And that works really well. Then you add another level of, so you go through the catchphrase round and go through a, what's the acting out one?
Oh, like trade?
Yeah, trade. So it's the same topic, but then catchphrase and then it's like, we call it visual. We play with our friends.
Yeah, I play that. I play visual. Not in classroom, but
yeah. So I mean, that's, use that.
Cool.
Here.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. I like the charade. Thank you, guys. So for the last few minutes, I just want to kind of talk about some pearls and pitfalls of game design. So for designing an educational game, you really want to define your outcomes and objectives. Very clear instruction. Again, the more complex the game, the more the students might be focusing on those instructions rather than the actual content. You want to balance entertainment and education. So again, if the difficulty level needs to be not too easy where they're bored, but not too challenging to where they get discouraged and don't want to play anymore. Timely feedback is very important, so anytime you're playing a game, there needs to be immediate feedback to them. And then I really strongly recommend assessing these and modifying based on your student feedback. So again, some of the pearls I already mentioned, moderate difficulty, Timely feedback, again, it's kind of similar to simulations in that it creates a fun failure environment. It allows you to fail, but not but still safely. One of the things that seems like a logistical issue, but that I think is really important, is you really want to increase the mobility of your game. Kind of like a fishbowl game. You want to make sure that you're not requiring it to be in one certain room or one certain computer, because as we know, that can change year to year and each time that you play it. So the more mobile the game, the better. Assess it if you can to get feedback, and just go ahead and plan to revise it each year, whether it's content or operation. We certainly don't want to use games as the only method of teaching information. It's really a good way for application and revision and review of information, but you still need to have some way for the students to get the information the first time. Again, there's too much focus on the technology versus the content. Could be high development costs or time. And then again, rewards can be controversial. I tend to not use rewards, at least at the pharmacy school level. If they don't want to stay and play the game, then they're not going to, and that's fine. But a lot of them enjoy the games and the competition level, so I usually don't think of things like extra points, but that may also depend on your population of students. So finally, the reason we need assessment in game-based learning is this is a 2013 Cochrane review of educational games for healthcare professions. They found over 2,000 citations, but only 2 randomized controlled trials. That was based on a Family Feud game as well as a Snakes and Ladders board game. So their overall conclusion was that even though they found 2,000 citations, they need higher quality research. So as a summary, for game-based learning, health professions education is the most popular subject area for learning games. Game-based learning allows you to address educational content in an interactive environment. It benefits the learner across the cognitive domains through interpersonal communication and problem-solving skills. It benefits the teacher through interaction, motivation, and focus. There's a plethora of types of games, but we really want the design elements to remain consistent. And I just recommend that you creatively design a game and then assess it. Are there any questions? Oh, yeah.
Which ones do you recommend would be good in an online environment?
Great question. I think it depends on your capabilities, whether how much of like video conferencing that you do and things like that. But certainly, I feel like the ones like you mentioned, the crossword puzzle and the potentially even things like the clue and stuff. If they could work together, they wouldn't be in the same room, obviously, but if they could work together on discussion boards for things like clue, or in this case, it was the pharmacy scene investigation. Anything where they can work together as a group, but as opposed to a board game where they may have to be in the same room together, those that can be interactive but not in the same room. Thank you so much. Enjoy lunch.